the Town on 99.7, 1450 WHTC and WHTC.com.
Welcome back to Talk of the Town for this Monday, September 12th. I'm Gary Stevens. It is the second Monday of the month, so at this time we have a chance to chat with a third-term Republican State House representative from Casco Township. That's the South Haven area. She represents most of Allegan County in the State House. She is Mary Whiteford, joining us via the Zoom connection. Good morning, Mary. Glad to be able to chat with you again.
Yeah, good morning, Gary. Good morning, everybody.
Glad you are with us. If you have a question for Representative Mary Whiteford, she'll be happy to answer it at 616-395-1450, 616-395-1450. For the most part, even though you are still very active in representing your constituents right now, the month of August and through Labor Day weekend, a week has been pretty much a case of maybe a session or two business-wise, but it's almost like a recharging of the batteries before the last push at the end of the session, going on through the end of the year. And there's a lot of things going on in Lansing, a lot of things that need to be done in the legislature once you and your colleagues go back to work this week.
Well, that's what's a big confusion for most people. 95% of my work has nothing to do with session. Session is kind of like the icing on the cake. All of the work gets done outside of session. So it's, I'm going to totally rephrase that, getting back to work, because we've been working this entire time. And I've got some major bill packages that I've been working with my colleagues and stakeholders on, from behavioral health to human trafficking to our child welfare system. So just a lot of work going on so that I have everything all teed up and ready to go when we do finally get some attention within our session schedule.
How much of a sense of urgency do you have with some of your measures, knowing that you are in your final days as a state lawmaker, as a state House representative, I should say?
Yeah. Well, I've put years into all of these initiatives, and so I feel confident that we're going to be able to address them. I called the chairs of all the committees that they're before, and I've got the child welfare bills on the full Senate floor, working through some adjustments with the governor's office, which is really important, of course. So that's in good shape. On my human trafficking package, and I also have a bill that creates family treatment courts officially in state law. We have specialty treatment courts in Ottawa and Allegan County and across the state, but there's a special nuance when it comes to child welfare and family treatment courts, is that these children are on the verge of having the state take over their role as parent, taking it away from their parent who may be drug addicted. And so this is a way to coach a family, supporting the children through DHHS involvement and the judiciary and law enforcement, to figure out a way to keep these families together. And I had some Supreme Court justices come to me and ask if I would be willing to work on this bill and, quote unquote, run it through. So I talked to the chair of judiciary about that. So it looks like we're getting in good shape for that. The human trafficking one's just trying to make sure that we're staying to the true intent. There were some changes the Attorney General's office was trying to make to it, which I went against what the commission that put together this bill package wanted. So that's important. Just make sure that we keep to the true sense of what we're trying to do. And then when it comes to behavioral health, I have been working on this my entire tenure. I just had the Senate Majority Leader try calling me, so I said I'll call back and figure out where we can get agreement and really do some important things. I mean, right now in the Detroit Free Press, an article came out that our entire system of recipient rights is immoral and not being done right. Because so this is the way it works. If you've got somebody who's in the community mental health system and they've got concerns about their treatment and their care, they get to make a complaint through recipient rights within the community mental health. Well, we're finding out that there's cases that people are fired for doing the right thing because it makes the community mental health agency, wherever that is in the state, look bad. So part of my bill package was a way to improve that. So we actually don't just stop at the community level. It brings it up to the state level to have oversight and follow-up, which doesn't happen right now. So a lot going on.
Yeah, it certainly is. If you have a question for State Representative Mary Whiteford, she'll be happy to answer it at 616-395-1450, 616-395-1450. A couple of initiatives, one out of Allegan County, trying to get an extra judge in the circuit court for Allegan County. There's two now. The caseload is definitely meriting an extra judge to be put in the courthouse at Allegan, and has to go through the legislative and the state process. I assume you're helping out in that regard.
Yeah, no, I appreciate that. My judges brought that to my attention, and then I worked with the Supreme Court because they're the ones who authorize it, SCAO. And I introduced a bill, and that was the other thing I talked to the chair of judiciary about, is the need for that. When my judges first brought it to my attention, there was no official report, because we can't just add judges willy-nilly. It has to be studied. It has to be proven out. And obviously, Allegan County needs another judge. Also in that list is a judge for Kent County, another for Kalamazoo County. So we're trying to roll everything up into one bill and make sure that we've got the Supreme Court behind it, that we've got the funding behind it. But yes, that is the third thing that I talked to the chair of judiciary about the other day.
Now, there's something that went on last week, and you were talking about human trafficking. Helen Zirup from Teddy's Trucking has been very instrumental in terms of making this awareness through her trucks and the like. And I know that when we had County Commissioner Dean Kappinga with us last week, he talked about it. Jim Story mentioned it in his weekly bulletin about what's going on in Allegan County. Working with the homeless in Allegan County, that is something that, let's put it this way, probably right up your line too.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so, and I have a friend who's testified several times. She was trafficked out of Grand Rapids 40 years ago, and she just had the ability to have a bunch of her charges expunged. So we've become really good friends. Someone's actually putting together a movie about her, what's happened with her. And I went to Grand Rapids to get interviewed for it, a documentary. But that's one of the things is in the law, an individual who has been exploited can have their prostitution charges expunged. But my bill allows any other charge, whether it's drug charges, stealing, to have that expunged as well. And then there's a companion bill to help children have that. But just making sure that that's prioritized. But I think the biggest thing that I've learned is I hosted a hearing on human trafficking for an awareness day. And I had former people who had been trafficked, as well as FBI agents, who looked at me in the eye and they said, Mary, you are doing nothing unless you're making sure that there's a safe place for people to go when they're first taken out of the life. And that is what I worked for 3 years on. So we've got $1.5 million prioritized for brand new startups, for initiatives that the whole community has to get involved in this, from healthcare to education to housing to career development, to protecting their legal rights. It's a very thorough process that needs to be done to be able to put together these homes. So I set aside I have a new puppy, sorry. I set aside $1.5 million of general fund for new projects, with the caveat that the department would be able to focus $3 to $5 million of Victim of Crime Act funds for existing programs. We've got that all up and going. And, there have been so many applications to be able to do this. I foresee one happening in Kent County, covering the west side of the state. We also set aside some money so that we can have collaboratives at the county level that can communicate with the FBI when they have situations arise. We've got a really good established one in Allegan County, but I want to see that going statewide. So we set aside $250,000 for that too. Just very comprehensive.
616-395-1450. If you have a question for State Representative Mary Whiteford, she'll be happy to answer it at 616-395-1450. Mary, your thoughts about Governor Whitmer's letter to the former Michigan Governor, Jennifer Granholm, current Energy Secretary, asking for the U.S. Energy Department's support as Holtec wants to reopen the Palisades nuclear power plant. I know that's in Van Buren County, but the economic spillout does come into the far southwest corner of Allegan County, and it does come with some groups like Beyond Nuclear who says that's a bad thing to happen. Your thoughts about maybe getting Palisades back up and running might help the economic community in the far southwest corner of the county.
Absolutely. So I did call my contact over at Haltech on Saturday. So just trying to understand where they're at on this. And, it's kind of interesting. Nuclear has always been a really political issue. And I was always surprised when the governor came out and wanted to reopen Palisades. Palisades was owned by Entergy. And Entergy had no interest in reopening it. And they were 3-4 years down the line in the process of getting jobs for all their employees, for not ordering any more nuclear fuel, for not doing major reinvestments that they would have if they had kept it open. So they were already way down the line, and they said they didn't want to be a part of reopening Palisades. But I also saw the local communities really, really impacted all the way into Allegan County, all over the west side, from the schools and the tax base. There was a huge tax base for covert schools and the jobs in the South Haven and West Michigan. It is really a big deal. So I did call the Holtec people on Saturday, and the new company is interested if they can get a lot of money to be able to do that and have a sustainable way to be able to cover their costs. Previously, most people don't realize this, is that Entergy had a contract with Consumers Energy to have a certain rate, which was higher than might have been expected as the cost of energy started going down over that 20-year period. And so when that contract ended, they actually weren't making as much money off of the users of the system. So they would have to have some kind of agreement on what the rate's going to be so that they can keep their doors open, of course. But there's ongoing conversations, and there's money out there at the federal level. So we'll have to see what happens. But I do think it would be good for our communities. And it's proven to be a very efficient way of providing energy to the people of Michigan and in our state.
Good morning. You're on Talking to Town with Representative Whiteford.
Hey, Representative Whiteford, kind of an off-the-cuff question. Do you have any insight as to why we're not seeing or hearing any ads for Tudor Dixon for governor? That's my question. See if you have any thoughts, okay?
All right. Thank you very much for the call.
Yeah, so I haven't been seeing a lot either. I feel like she's a good friend. She's working really hard, but yeah, like I said, I'm not seeing it out there too. And of course, I'm going to back a Republican because I'm Republican, but I do think she's a really great person. And it's really sad how a person can be completely torn apart in the media. And that's what's so hard about politics, right? People feel like they've got their own deeply held beliefs and they have to fight for it. But I believe in running a Christian campaign. That means you put yourself out there and you don't have to go against and attack somebody else. And so I just want to see her coming out with all her plans, which she worked really hard for to win the primary. So keep your eyes open, keep the faith. If you could say an extra prayer, for all our politicians whose lives are put on the line and put themselves out there, and how ruthless different groups can be. And I'm just trying to pray for people to follow Jesus and to do the right thing and do their best without hurting somebody else.
Yeah, it's a case of maybe the candidate will take the high road and the political action committee is the ones actually doing the work. And that's exactly what we're seeing right now. The Democrats, and we'll see it with the Republicans too. However, I'm not certain how much they will spend, especially on a national scale here, depending on whether or not they can flip the seats, or the national party would feel they could flip the seats, be it in the governor's office or be it with other, congressional seats. I'm not seeing anything from the Democratic congressional committees trying to upend Bill Huizenga, as we had seen with Fred Upton before he pulled out of the race. No, I don't think we are going to see Mary Whiteford's name be announced by Governor Whitmer today. Later on today at a press conference, Governor Whitmer will announce 150 Republican supporters in a group called Republicans for Whitmer Committee. Interesting development there, Mary, in the political scene.
Well, I have to say, as somebody who's an insider, Governor Whitmer has a lot of power of the purse strings, a lot of power of getting initiatives done. And many of the people on that list are political insiders who benefit from being with the winner of this race. And that's just how it is. I still think Tudor Dixon is a great person, and I've endorsed her. I see her being a great leader who's not going to be, I think she wants to be governor. I don't think she's looking to be vice president. I think she just wants to take care of the people of our state. And that's why I believe in Tudor.
Let's stay on the political aspect for a couple of moments. Your thoughts about all of the ballot proposals apparently going to be decided by the people. There were some efforts to try to maybe get some of them knocked off. Sometimes the technicalities might be the case, but it looks like a decision on reproductive rights and voting rights and all that, people are going to have a chance to vote.
I'm going to bring a different perspective on that one as well. There's not too many states that allow citizen-based legislation or constitutional changes. When I try to run a bill, it could take 3-4 years of going through and getting people on board and listening to stakeholders and finessing it and making amendments and getting it in a good shape. What happened with every single one of these petitions is somebody got in there, put together language, and then went out and got signatures. And a lot of money came from out of state for these initiatives. And that's the sad reality, is outsiders are hijacking our Constitution and our state law in some cases. And it's not going through a good legislative process to make those decisions. If it was up to me, I would say vote no on everything. I mean, I like the idea with the term limits. I knew what I was getting into, that I was going to serve for 6.5 years the way I have. But I think that we have more weakness in the House of Representatives because of the short time that legislators are in there. There's more power within the Senate because for the most part, they've been in the House and the Senate. But so I think there's some merit to that, but I seriously have a hard time with just voting yes on these initiatives that haven't gone through the legislative process and gotten the input that's necessary, that all the other ways that we do it happen. And when you follow the money, there's millions and millions of dollars coming from out-of-state interests who are trying to steer our state. And I think that's wrong. And I understand the reason for these initiatives, but they've gotten really, really skewed if you follow the money.
And also the interesting track, if you really want to follow the track of these initiatives, and I'm not talking about the ones now, but the ones that have cleared in the past, that have won public support with the electorate, and how it has worked out. You take a look at the medical marijuana initiative and then the recreational marijuana initiative. And, you know, let's put it this way. What the backers say was going to happen hasn't happened yet. It really hasn't happened yet.
And for us to make any changes, we need 2/3 of the legislature, because honestly, there's not very many brand new public acts. Every one of our bills, for the most part, are amendments to current statute. So if we want to make any amendments to any of those, it takes 2/3 of the legislature, which is a very high margin. So that's the reality. And I just ask everybody, either do your homework or just vote no, because we need to make sure that these things come from your local elected officials and it works through the process in a bipartisan fashion to get people on board to make the most point. And I tell you, when it comes down to abortion, I will do anything I can to decrease the number of abortions in our state. Over 30,000 abortions occur right now. I feel like it's used more as a form of birth control for people who don't know better. I understand there are exceptions, and I think we really have to focus on that. Life of the mother, that's part of our law anyways, from the 30s, and that's always important. But rape and incest, if it's at an early point, that makes sense. So vote no on everything, everybody.
Phone number for Mary Whiteford's office, 517-373-0836, 517-373-0836, online, gophouse.org, and look for Mary Whiteford's name. Take care of the new little puppy, Mary Whiteford. Thank you very much for joining us this morning, and we'll talk again next month if all goes well.
Thank you, Gary. God bless everybody.
Thank you very much, Mary Whiteford, on 99.7 and 1450 WHTC.